Welcome back to the Tyler Smith pod. It has been way too long since the last episode, but regardless, we are back. I'm riding solo today. We're going to be talking the NFL offseason as well. We all know Super Bowls are won in March, so let's get taking a look at the biggest move so far in this NFL offseason. So first, we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East, making some big time moves. Shout out to ESPN for tracking all this for us here, but the biggest move the Buffalo Bills have had is Von Miller. They stole Von Miller from the Rams, a massive contract, massive multi-year deal, huge money on that. The Bills are just banking on Von Miller being that extra piece to get them over the hump. They had a great offseason, in my opinion. They had a great season as well in the playoffs, making a good run. They just got an overtime coin toss away from potentially being in the Super Bowl, if you ask me. Their defense was just unreal last year. They were lights out. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, all those guys. They had so many dudes that should have been in the Pro Bowl, but didn't get in there just because of their names. But Von Miller, Hall of Famer, Super Bowl MVP in the past, and kind of a huge reason the Rams were able to defeat the Cincinnati Bengals in the past playoffs here. So we're just looking to see if the Buffalo Bills can get over that hump. I think Von Miller does that for them. But a sneaky good signing right here is O.J. Howard at tight end. O.J. Howard played for the Buccaneers the last few years, came from Alabama, I believe his rookie season. Kind of had an injury there, kept him out all year. And then since then, he just kind of sat behind Rob Gronkowski, the greatest tight end of all time, if you ask me. So you're just having a guy learn from one of the best, heal up, not take too many hits. I think he's year 4 right now, but that is a massive weapon for the Buffalo Bills. They're going to have Stephon Diggs now with O.J. Howard. O.J. Howard's going to get a lot of receptions and a lot of targets because everyone's going to be so focused on Stephon Diggs. Having that good 1-2 combo is going to be great for them in this coming NFL season. The Buffalo Bills already were going to be up there no matter what, no matter off-season moves they made. You knew they were going to be a top 5 team in the AFC as a lock no matter what. But I think these moves get them up there to maybe number 1, number 2 in the AFC. I mean, it's going to be a loaded division in the AFC East, a lot of competition. The AFC as a conference in a whole is loaded. It's going to be interesting to see how they work out in the AFC East. I think the Buffalo Bills will top the AFC East, just fall behind the Dolphins and maybe the Patriots. And then obviously, the Jets. The Jets are the Jets. They're always going to be finishing last in the AFC East. They're a bit away from competing. Zach Wilson's a good piece for them. But the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to see them coming out of the AFC East, I think. But the Miami Dolphins, keeping it in the AFC East, the Dolphins made a massive trade to get Tyreek Hill. Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, now head coach of the Dolphins, gets a massive weapon in Tyreek Hill. And then he also, the one that everyone's kind of not talking about, Raheem Mostert, the running back from the San Francisco 49ers. Think about that for a second. Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, bringing their star featured running back to Miami. So that's going to be great. Someone who already knows the offense, someone to be the guy that Tua can just turn around and hand it off to all the time. And Chase Edmonds as well. That backfield, scary fast. Raheem Mostert, probably one of the sneaky fast guys in the league. Sneaky fast. He's not a white guy, but he's just so fast, super athletic, and a freak in the backfield. Very slept on as a running back in this league. And Chase Edmonds, another young guy, explosive as can be. If he can find a hole, he's gone. He's one of those running backs that needs to figure out the game a bit, in my opinion, trying to learn where to hit the holes in the line. But once he finds those holes, he's gone. It's almost impossible for you to catch him. But they have so many weapons now. They have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill in the receiving core, the 2 fastest wide receivers in the league. Unfortunately, they just traded away Devontae Parker. I think he would have been a great fit for them, but that's a sign that I think they're going to draft somebody young, and these young wide receivers are elite. I think the Dolphins could find someone very well in the draft to kind of fit into that wide receiver 3 slot. But the San Francisco 49ers offense, if you guys recall, Deebo Samuel played kind of that wide back position, kind of made his own spot in the NFL. Mike McDaniel made that for him. So you have Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle playing that position now. It's going to be a scary sight to see. Another move, probably the biggest free agent in this class, Terran Armstead, the offensive tackle from the New Orleans Saints. Plays left tackle. There's been some rumblings that he might move to right tackle because Tua is a left-handed quarterback, so his blind side is the right tackle side. But regardless, wherever they put him on the line, I think he's going to end up at the left tackle position. A great signing for them. Going to lock down that side of the offensive line so you can slide some more help to the right tackle side. But I think it's going to protect Tua and give Tua Tagovailoa a chance to be elite this year in year 3. The biggest thing, in my opinion, that's going to give Tua the chance is these elite weapons he has. He's never had a full season. He's never had a coaching staff that said, that's our guy. Brian Flores was switching him and Ryan Fitzpatrick like crazy. No one's ever given him a full chance to say, here are the keys, take the offense and go. I think Mike McDaniel is that guy for him. Mike McDaniel being an offensive genius as well, offensive guru type of coach, is going to see Tua flourish these coming seasons. And then the New England Patriots being kind of quiet, not making too many moves, but it's always the Patriots. They spent a ton last offseason. I really want to say the Patriots might end up third in the division with a loss of J.C. Jackson and not really bringing anything else. But the Patriots are the Patriots. They have Bill Belichick. They have Mac Jones. Turn Mac Jones into a robot now. It's going to be scary to see, but if I had to bet now, if you're a betting person, bet the New England Patriots finishing third in the division. I think is a very realistic possibility. If they finish second in the division, it's because the coaching within the division with the Jets and Mike McDaniels at the Dolphins just doesn't really pan out. That's the only way they get out of third place in this division, in my opinion. I really think they didn't add much and they kind of stayed complacent. But it's the Patriots. It's Bill Belichick. So you can make an argument both ways for them to finish at second place or third place. But I think the Miami Dolphins have too much talent, in my personal opinion. Will that talent come to fruition? Will it come out there and work on the field? I don't know. We got to come find out come August, September, November, October, December, and some of those late months of the NFL season. But as of right now, April 3rd, I'm picking the Dolphins. They look better on paper, in my personal opinion. Now, the biggest off-season move, in my personal opinion, the Cincinnati Bengals. It's unreal. I'm so elated as a Bengals fan. The Bengals did everything right this off-season. They went out. They got Alex Kappa. They got Ted Karras. They got Lyle Collins and Hayden Hurst. The only downside is they lose CJ Uzomah, the tight end, but you can replace a tight end in this league with how good this offense is, in my personal opinion. You just had to get some people out there to protect Joe Burrow. And my God, did they hit home runs on every single one of these signings. The one that is the biggest signing of all is this Lyle Collins. I was saying for the Bengals to trade with the Cowboys to get him, give up a first rounder, give up maybe even a second rounder with that as well, to get a bona fide tackle that's going to protect Joe Burrow day in, day out, and just kill people. And unfortunately for the Cowboys, they released him. Thankfully, the Bengals, they released him. So they were able to get him on a great contract and just sign him on for a few years here. And he's going to be a big piece of protecting Joe Burrow over the coming seasons. The biggest question mark, though, is will he stay on the field? He's had some injury history in the past, so that's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky. But I think if he stays on the field, he's one of the best tackles in the league. I'm very, very excited to see him working out with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that's the best thing they have. They improved the offensive line from a passing standpoint. So Joe Burrow's going to sit back and pass, not get sacked 9-10 times in a ball game, but also the run game as well. Lyle Collins, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, and Hayden Hurst. They're all great blockers. Hayden Hurst is a great blocking tight end. So that run game has now become even more elite to help balance out that passing attack. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bengals persevere throughout this season. I think it's a great move for them, in my opinion. And I think they could easily win the AFC North, but the AFC is loaded. But I trust Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and that defense. They brought everybody back, even Eli Apple. But hey, they brought everybody back. They can make a run. They just got to stay strong, keep focused. And I think they can get hot. Man, the sky's the limit for them. They could be in the Super Bowl again next year. I'm very excited for this Cincinnati Bengals team. But the biggest question mark of signings, the biggest question mark of all, the Cleveland Browns. Man, did they go all out? They got Deshaun Watson. They gave up the farm for that man, then turned around and gave him a $230 million guaranteed contract. It's unreal. Browns fans, from a football standpoint, should be elated. From a social standpoint, I can see every single side of this thing. He did some terrible things, if it is true, but personally, you have to see the process out. I hope justice is served if needed. I hope he's protected and saved on the field. I just want the right thing to happen here, whether Deshaun Watson's completely innocent or he's guilty of all these charges. But it is a very scary thing. Just thinking about this, if I was the GM of the Cleveland Browns, 22 people all having a very similar story against one individual, doesn't look good. But he's kind of dodged a few bullets. Some grand juries chose not to indict Deshaun Watson criminally, could still be charged civilly, and that would just be some fines, some monetary things. But it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. The biggest question mark around it, though, is will Roger Goodell suspend him for the season? So that's the one question mark. If it's going to be a multi-game suspension, could be a single game suspension, or no suspension at all. Roger Goodell has not said anything. He says he's going to kind of sit back, wait for some good information to come his way and find out what's going on with the legal process here. So Deshaun Watson could be sitting around all year kind of waiting, like, am I suspended? Am I not? And the Cleveland Browns are going to have to deal with that. It very easily could be an 8 to 10 game suspension. Then, that's going to get appealed, come down to 6 games, maybe about half of whatever the initial number is. But it's going to be interesting to see. The Browns were a little smart, though, in the contract, kept his cap hit to $1 million this year. So even if he is suspended all 16 games or he doesn't even play at all, he's not going to be hurting the salary cap too much. But the Browns are banking on this man's innocence and for him to carry the franchise for God knows how long, however long his career is. Really, that's what you're banking on when you make a move like this. You sell out everything. You move on from a former number 1 overall pick in Baker Mayfield, who, in my opinion, top 15, 16 quarterback in the league. It's interesting to see the move. Somebody is going to always say, oh, well, his stats were terrible this past season. The dude was playing with a torn labrum and some other broken bone in his left shoulder. He had a little sling on where he barely could throw, and they had games where he threw 50, 60 attempts. The Browns weren't setting him up for success, especially when they have 2 elite running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt back there. It's going to be interesting how to see this entire offseason works out for the Browns, but they're taking a lot of public grief, public hate. But if Deshaun Watson is innocent and that man gets on the field, he's a top 10 quarterback in this league and a young quarterback too. It's going to be a scary future for the Browns. They have their ceiling unreal. Scares me as a Cincinnati Bengals fan. But the floor could set this franchise back another 10, 15 years. The Browns are the Browns. It could easily set them up for failure and they could be dead forever. Or they could become up there in NFL royalty, competing for championships. There's no in between with this team. It's going to be scary to see how this works out. I'm on the edge of my seat every day looking for some more news about Deshaun Watson. It's going to be interesting to see how this works out from an NFL fan point. But if I'm a Browns fan, I'm sitting here, I'm biting my nails on my fingers, just nervous as can be. Just like, will Deshaun Watson be cleared? Will Baker Mayfield? What's going on? This entire situation, it's up in the air. The Browns could either be a Super Bowl contending team for the next 5 to 10 seasons, or they could be the worst team in the league for another 10 years. And Browns fans are so loyal, they don't deserve that, which is why I question this decision, because Baker Mayfield got them to the playoffs. No one else has been able to do that my entire lifetime. It's a big question mark, but I feel for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield deserves a job in this league, but it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. The Browns either hit a grand slam in Game 7 or they choked, and they're going to be dead forever. Pittsburgh Steelers, keeping it in the AFC North. Mitch Trubisky, that's the move. And some of these other moves, it's like, oh, but they had this guy. They're just little plug and play moves. But Mitch Trubisky, former quarterback for the Bears, just came away from the Bills as a backup to Josh Allen. man, did he find a great situation. He's on a team with an elite defense, with a young stud running back in Najee Harris. Mitchell Trubisky has great potential here with very minimal expectation. It's going to be interesting to see, though, if the Steelers do go out there and draft one of these young quarterbacks like a Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder. I think those are the two they're going to go after, not a Kenny Pickett. I think it's Malik Willis or Ridder. Personal opinion, little draft insight, but I think if they do draft someone, it's Malik Willis, and Malik Willis could give a run for the job his rookie year. It's Desmond Ridder. I think Desmond Ridder sits for a season under Mitch Trubisky and then steps into the role. But either way, the Steelers could be one of those teams. If this hits with a young quarterback and like a Malik Willis, they do go out and draft him. They could be finishing about second place in this division, giving the Ravens and the Browns a run for their money for that second place spot. But if it's just Mitch Trubisky, I think they finish third in the division. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. If they finish third in the division, it's because guys like TJ Watt carried this team to success, as well as Najee Harris taking a ton of touches, whether it's in the run game, quick passes out of the backfield, etc. I think the Steelers are going to finish third in the division pretty much no matter what, unless there's some big injuries with the Ravens again, where like Lamar Jackson out for a whole season or something that's kind of unseen, something in the future that should not happen. I hope it doesn't happen, unless there's some crazy circumstances that do arise. I think the Steelers finish third place in the division. And a hot take, if Deshaun Watson is not playing this year, Browns fourth place, Ravens second place. But if Deshaun Watson plays this season more than 12, 13 games, if he was only suspended for 4, I think the Browns could finish second place in the division. And I think they could maybe be a better team than the Bengals, but I think they'll finish second place in the division if Deshaun Watson is suspended those 4 or 5 games, just because they're going to be without their starting quarterback for 5 to 6 games this season, most likely. I think that's going to be a setback. So say he's suspended 4 games, they can go 1-3, but then game 5, game 6, trying to get Deshaun Watson's feet underneath him. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The Browns, very talented roster. I think their ceiling is second place in the division. I think just because the question marks surrounding Deshaun Watson's situation right now, but the Steelers and Browns are right there in that 2 to 3 cusp. And the biggest one that I'm thinking about right now is the Indianapolis Colts. I wish we had Kevin here today to get his opinion, but next time he pops on, I'll make sure we ask him about it. But man, Matt Ryan to the Colts. The Colts started off this offseason thinking Aaron Rodgers. They're thinking Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, something. But unfortunately, none of those hit. They got Matt Ryan. And I think that's a better move, in my opinion. They spent less, and they got a guy that's just as good, who's taking teams to the Super Bowl. And I think he's a great quarterback. Everyone's going to talk about that 28-3 game where the Patriots came back to beat them. That wasn't on him. That was on Kyle Shanahan, the current 49ers head coach. But personally, Matt Ryan is a massive trade for this team. I think they got another 2 to 3 years of elite ball with Matt Ryan. The biggest question mark, though, is their wide receiver room. With only Michael Pittman there currently, they let some of their other wide receivers walk this offseason. They didn't match their contracts, so they're on other teams. But if the Colts could get somebody, Odell Beckham still out there, Julio Jones still out there. I know they may not be the Julio Jones or Odell Beckham of old, but they're still elite wide receivers in this league who know the ins and outs of the game. If they can sign a couple of solid wide receivers and end up with a top 15 wide receiver room in this league with probably the best running back, Jonathan Taylor. No slight to Derrick Henry, just coming off injury. You're going to be at number 2. But they have a 1A, 1B running back, with a top 12 quarterback as a bare minimum. Matt Ryan could be that guy that gets them over the hump and finally fulfill some of Jim Irsay's promises of delivering Super Bowls to the Indianapolis community. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be an interesting team. It's going to be fun to watch. They went out, they spent big. They spent very big this offseason, on the first few days of the offseason as well, getting some guys like Brandon Sheriff and Kirk and Evan Ingram. They spent way too much on these guys, but it's kind of to build the culture so you can understand. They had to give them some extra money to convince these guys to come to Jacksonville, but the Jaguars could succeed this season. I think they'll probably finish third in the division. I think it'll be the Colts or Titans at 1 and 2. And then you're going to have the Texans finishing 4th. And the Jaguars are going to find 3rd place here. That's going to be a very successful 3rd place run. In my opinion, a very successful 3rd place run, not just a 3rd place because you're just behind them. I think it's a very successful 3rd place run, something that Jacksonville Jaguar fans can be very happy for in the coming future with a young quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, a generational talent, truly a generational talent. But my, oh my, the AFC West. Wow. Russell Wilson. They gave the farm for Russell Wilson. That guy, Danger Russ, whoever, whatever nickname you want to give him, my gosh, a quarterback that can throw the deep ball with such an elite and talented team already around him. He can just walk in and promote this team to a high level. Russell Wilson's going to give this team some new ceiling, some new growth, and it's going to give them an answer at quarterback, an answer they've been searching for since Peyton Manning left them. I think it's a great move. I think Russell Wilson helps them contend. I think before the Tyreek Hill move, I have them about 2nd or 3rd in the division just because this division is so loaded. I really think, though, after post Tyreek Hill trade, I think the Broncos are the number 2 team in this division, or maybe the number 1 team in this division. I think the Chiefs are going to fall off a little bit. I think they're going to suffer without Tyreek Hill, probably the most explosive wide receiver in the National Football League. I think Russell Wilson will get the Broncos to be that number 1, number 2 team. It just depends on how well they click and how soon they start to click on the offensive side of things. We know that defense is elite. The defense has always been there. There's been no question. Since the Peyton Manning days, they've had the defense. But it's just a big question mark around this offense. Russell Wilson, a very smart football mind, especially playing a mile high, can get a few extra yards in that deep ball he loves to throw. I think the Broncos could be very successful this coming NFL season. I think they finish 1st or 2nd in the division. 1st, if they start hitting their stride very early in the season by game 3, game 4. But if it takes them game 5, game 6, maybe, I think they finish 2nd place in the division behind the Chargers. But the Kansas City Chiefs, marquee signing, Justin Reed, Juju Smith-Schuster, but more about marquee leaving Tyreek Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, 2 studs on their football team. Tyreek Hill, the offense kind of built around him. I know you have Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, but that's been his number 1 weapon since day 1. And now you lose Tyrann Mathieu, a bona fide leader on that back end, a solid NFL veteran, and probably a top 3 safety in the NFL. It's going to be very interesting to see how they replace him. They get Justin Reed, who some claim to be the younger version of Tyrann Mathieu. I think he's a bit more raw. I think he's just as bit athletic and freaky athletic as him, but I don't think he has the same intangibles and same kind of help stats, whether that's the man coverage, the zone coverage, things like that. I think he has the body and the athleticism, but some of the just mental game side of things, I think there's a big fall off. I think Justin Reed is a top 15 safety in the league. Realistically, I think he has that ability to get there. But I think he's just a little less than what Tyrann Mathieu is. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to feel that because their secondary was the weakest part of their ball club last year. And they let their best secondary player go. So I think the Kansas City Chiefs are thinking here is addition by subtraction. But personally, I don't think this is an addition by any means. I think you're replacing somebody you couldn't afford. But I think you need to find a way to afford Tyrann Mathieu. Tyrann Mathieu, wherever he ends up going, will be an instant starter, an instant captain on that team, I think, and an instant leader within that defense. I think Tyrann Mathieu is a top 5 safety in this league, even with him aging. I think he's a great player in this league. He's a dominant player. He can help out on the weak side with the corner, go out and just shut down all the side of the field himself. He's a great player. He can play in the slot, plays like a sub linebacker, or even just as a typical strong safety, free safety. He's just one of those guys you can move around as a chess piece and just match up with anyone, especially with how these offenses are very explosive and just playmakers all over the field. You need guys like Tyrann Mathieu on your defense if you want to make it to the championships, the AFC, NFC championship, or even the Super Bowl. And especially in the AFC West, that's just loaded like this, because every week you're facing off a top 10 team, top 12 team, top 15 team if you're being very hateful to the AFC West. So either way, you're facing off elite teams every single week, day in, day out, and you're going to be missing a guy like Tyrann Mathieu a lot more than you think. A lot of people are saying the Kansas City Chiefs could finish dead last in the division. I'm not going to say that. I think that's a bit of a stretch. But third place, second place, very realistic for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it's going to be Broncos, Chargers, then Chiefs. I hate to bet against Pat Mahomes. I hate to bet against Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and the boys out there. But I think the Kansas City Chiefs will finish third in the division. I think they're going to feel the exits of Tyreek Hill and Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, they're going to have to hope some of these draft picks they hit and just be stud players for them in the back end of that secondary and elite offensive weapons. It's going to be very interesting to see how it works out. But I think the Kansas City Chiefs have a very real expectation of finishing third in the division. Like, it's weird for them to say that, like, oh, the Chiefs, if you asked me 4 or 5 months ago at the end of this NFL season, after they lost to the Bengals, and you told me the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to be in the playoffs next year, I'd just be like, shut up. There's no way. They're going to be there. The Kansas City Chiefs have been a staple since they got Pat Mahomes. He's starstruck. He's that big-time quarterback, top 3 quarterback in this league. But now it's a very real possibility that they don't make the playoffs and don't finish second. They finish third in the division. It's going to be a real eye-opening year for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Las Vegas Raiders getting Davante Adams, hooking him up with his old college roommate at quarterback, Derek Carr. It's going to be interesting to see how this works out. They've always kind of been a weapon away. They now have Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, and Davante Adams. Maybe they bring back Deshaun Jackson, and they got a good defense as well. McDaniel from the Patriots coming over, being the head coach, good offensive guy, could be a new offensive scheme that helps this Las Vegas Raiders team reach a new level. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out. The Raiders could be a team that has a high ceiling. There's a lot of Raider Nation out there who thinks, oh, we're going to win the division, things like that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll finish third in the division, maybe even fourth. Third is like a peak. I think they'll peak out at third and make the playoffs. But I don't think the Raiders are better than the Chiefs, Chargers, and the Broncos, personally. The Raiders made some great strides to get better, but I think they're going to be the team that kind of gets the short end of the stick. They're going to have a quality record outside of the division, but end up finishing fourth within the division just because it's so stacked. I think if you put the Raiders in many other divisions or conferences, maybe even put them in the NFC, or if you just put them in a different part of the AFC, I think they win that division. But in the loaded AFC West, I think the Las Vegas Raiders get the short end of the stick and do not make the playoffs and finish fourth in the division. The Los Angeles Chargers, honestly, didn't make a lot of moves. They just made 2 starstruck moves. They got Khalil Mack through trade for nothing. Khalil Mack is a weapon. Probably one of the best edge rushers in the league, one of the best linebackers in this league, because technically he's a linebacker. I know they say D lineman here, but he's a left outside linebacker, right outside linebacker. But he's one of those stand-up rushers, and he's elite at it. He's going to get after the quarterback. He's going to help out this Chargers defense, bolster up that run game. I think that with the addition of J.C. Jackson, who they got for a pretty good contract as well, they didn't have to reset the quarterback market and overpay for him, and bringing in him with Derwin James, and also with a younger, talented defensive backcourt they have, which they built throughout the draft these past few seasons, could be very exciting to see how that works out. I think the Chargers end up winning the division or finish second place in the division. Justin Herbert, a young, great quarterback, up there, same draft class as Joe Burrow and Tua. I think Justin Herbert could have an MVP season with how well this offense is, getting a second season with his new head coach. I think the Chargers could be a team that finishes top 4 in the AFC. And lastly, the last team we're going to talk about here today, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you look back on this channel, look back at the Twitter, things like that, you will realize that it was never reported on this channel that Tom Brady was retiring. He never officially put in the paperwork, never officially did anything, just made an IG post. And Tom Brady is back. He's getting the gang back together. He's keeping Chris Godwin, Carlton Davis, Ryan Jensen, and bringing back some of the other boys, bringing back Leonard Fournette, and they're adding William Golston and Ndamukong Suh, still out there, probably coming back to Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers in a completely empty and depleted NFC will make a run to the title this year. I think Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl this year, maybe over my Bengals. But hey, I think Tom Brady is going to win the Super Bowl this season. I think Tom Brady will end up winning it all and going out on top, him and Gronk up on that podium, celebrating it one more time and going out like that. Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, getting the boys back together for at least one more run. And I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the NFC South, win the NFC over a Green Bay Packers team who's lost it all. Lost Devontae Adams, still has Aaron Rodgers, but no weapons around him. I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come back with Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, and they bring back Ndamukong Suh, which they'll probably announce here in a few weeks. Heck, maybe even AB sticks around. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the Super Bowl this year. That's my NFL offseason overview as of April 3rd. I think it's going to be a great NFL season. And as we all know, Super Bowls are won in March. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Appreciate it.